You're sitting across from them. The words hit before you can brace for impact. You're too sensitive. You always make everything about yourself. You're the one who's controlling. And there it is, that split-second vertigo where you question everything. Your reality tilts. You wonder if they're right. Maybe you are too much. Maybe you are the problem. The knot forms in your stomach. Not from the insult itself, but from the disorientation that follows. Because somewhere, in a place you can't quite name, you know something is wrong with this equation. You know these accusations don't fit the architecture of your actions, but their delivery is so confident, so certain, so final, and in that uncertainty, you begin to shrink. But here's what you haven't seen yet. This isn't a series of isolated attacks. This is a repeating pattern, a psychological mechanism so precise, so consistent, that once you learn to recognize it, you'll never be defenseless against it again. Every insult follows the same blueprint. Every accusation carries the same signature, and that signature isn't about you at all. It's about them. The person hurling the insult is not describing your character. They are confessing their own. They are handing you a map to their interior world, disguised as an attack on yours. They are showing you exactly what they cannot face in themselves. The fractures, the fears, the unacknowledged darkness by projecting it onto the nearest screen. And that screen is you. This is the architecture of projection, and it is the narcissist's most involuntary revelation. Here is the truth they will never speak aloud. A narcissist's insults are not attacks. They are confessions. Carl Jung understood this mechanism with surgical clarity. He called projection an unconscious automatic process whereby a content that is unconscious to the subject transfers itself to an object so that it seems to belong to that object. Translation: the traits they cannot accept in themselves, their controlling nature, their selfishness, their fragility, are ejected from their self-image and grafted onto you. They look at you and see a mirror, but the reflection is not yours, it is theirs, and they are describing what they see in that mirror with perfect, unwitting accuracy. The promise of the next 20 minutes is this: you will learn to decode their projections in real time. You will stop absorbing their accusations as truth and start reading them as psychological blueprints. You will see the wounded child behind the monster, not to excuse their behavior, but to dismantle its power over you. By the end of this, you will no longer ask yourself, "Am I really like that?" You will ask a far more useful question. What are they confessing about themselves? This is not about healing them. This is about armoring yourself with clarity. Let's begin. Projection is not a conscious strategy. It is a defense mechanism, the psyche's way of preserving a false self-image by externalizing what threatens it. Here's how it works. The narcissist has built an identity around a fantasy, a story of superiority, specialness, and invulnerability. This fantasy is the load-bearing wall of their psychological structure. Without it, they collapse. But beneath that fantasy lives the shadow Jung's term for the disowned, unacknowledged parts of the self, the insecurities, the rage, the neediness, the profound sense of inadequacy they cannot survive feeling. The shadow contains everything that contradicts the fantasy, and so it must be expelled. This is where you enter the equation. When the narcissist encounters a trait in themselves that threatens their self-image, they do not process it, they do not integrate it, they do not even consciously register it. Instead, they relocate it onto you. They see it in you, vividly and urgently, even when it doesn't exist there. They attack it in you with ferocity because they are fighting for their survival, not from you, but from the truth of themselves. This is why their insults often feel so bizarre, so mismatched to reality. You're accused of being selfish when you've been sacrificing your needs for months. You're called manipulative when you've been walking on eggshells to avoid confrontation. You're labeled as cold when you're the only one trying to keep the connection alive. The accusations don't match your behavior because they were never about your behavior. They match theirs. And once you see this, everything changes. Let's decode the most common projections. These are the insults you've heard, the accusations that left you spinning. We're going to translate them. Accusation: you're too sensitive. Translation: I cannot tolerate emotional depth because it threatens my control. Your feelings are a mirror to the vulnerability I have spent my life fleeing. I need you to be numb so I don't have to face the fact that I am. This is the narcissist who rages when you cry, who mocks your hurt, who turns your pain into a personality flaw. They are not describing your emotional state. They are describing their terror of their own. Sensitivity, to them, equals weakness. And weakness is the ultimate threat to the fantasy. So they project it onto you and attack it there, where it's safe, where it doesn't dismantle them. Accusation: you always make everything about yourself. Translation: I have no capacity for true reciprocity. Every conversation, every interaction must serve my ego. When you express a need, it disrupts my centrality. I am accusing you of the very narcissism I cannot see in myself. This is the person who hijacks every story, who turns your triumph into their trauma, who cannot celebrate your success without centering their reaction to it. They accuse you of self-centeredness because they experience any focus that isn't on them as theft. The projection here is almost comically transparent, but it works because you're conditioned to doubt yourself, and they're conditioned to feel entitled. Accusation: you're the one who's controlling. Translation: I need to control every variable in my environment to maintain the illusion of superiority. Your autonomy, your boundaries, your independent choices terrifies me because it proves I do not have absolute power. I am describing my own compulsion by framing your self-preservation as domination. This is the person who monitors your phone, dictates your friendships, and punishes you for decisions made without their approval. Then they call you controlling when you ask for basic respect. Why? Because in their architecture, control is survival. And they cannot admit they are the architects of your cage. So they reverse the accusation. They make you the warden. Here's where the mechanism gets darker. The insults are not random. They are specific, surgical even. The narcissist attacks the qualities in you that most closely resemble the qualities they have exiled from their own self-concept. This is why the accusations often sting, even when you know they're false. Because they're aimed at the intersection of your real vulnerabilities and their disowned traits. You've worked hard not to be controlling because you grew up in chaos and you value freedom. So when they call you controlling, it lands. It activates your vigilance against becoming what you fear. But here's the conspiracy. They didn't choose that insult at random. They chose it because they are controlling. And on some unconscious level, they sensed your sensitivity to the accusation. They sensed the territory where you're already defending yourself, and they weaponized it. This is the genius of projection. It finds the softest part of your armor and strikes there, not because they see your flaw, but because they see their own reflection in your reaction. Jung called this the hook. Projection only sticks when there's something in the other person, some fear, some unhealed wound, some unconscious belief that resonates with the projection. But here's the critical distinction. The resonance doesn't mean their accusation is true. It means their accusation has found the place where you're already doubting yourself. And they are exploiting that doubt to externalize their own. This is why you must learn to separate the grain of your actual growth work from the entirety of their projection. Yes, examine yourself. Yes, stay accountable to your real edges. But do not accept their entire map of you as accurate just because one landmark feels familiar. They are not cartographers of your soul. They are refugees from their own. Let's go deeper into the catalog of confessions, because once you know the code, you can translate every insult in real time. They call you selfish. Read, I am parasitic. I take without reciprocity. I expect endless supply without offering nourishment. And I cannot confront the void of my own generosity, so I accuse you of withholding what I have never given. They call you dramatic. Read, I manufacture crises to maintain centrality. I escalate conflicts to feed on the emotional chaos. But I need to be seen as calm, as rational, as above it all. So I project my theatrics onto your legitimate emotional responses. They call you jealous. Read, I am consumed by envy. I cannot tolerate your success, your happiness, your wholeness. I compare myself to everyone and come up lacking. But I cannot admit this rot inside me, so I accuse you of the envy that is devouring me from within. They call you a liar. Read, I live in a constant state of deception, deceiving you, deceiving others, deceiving myself. My entire identity is a fabrication. And when you question any part of my false narrative, I experience it as an existential attack. So I accuse you of dishonesty to discredit your truth. Do you see the pattern now? The insult is always a confession. The attack is always a self-portrait. And the more vicious the accusation, the deeper the disowned wound they are trying to escape. Here is where you reclaim your power. Once you understand that their insults are projections, you realize something profound. Every accusation is a vulnerability map. They are handing you intelligence on their shadow. They are showing you, involuntarily, desperately, exactly where their structure is weakest. When they call you manipulative, they are confessing, I rely on manipulation to get my needs met. I do not trust direct communication because I do not believe my authentic self is worthy of receiving what I want. This is a person who has no faith in their own substance, who has learned that only through coercion, guilt, or deception can they secure supply. That is weakness, not strength. And you now know it. When they call you weak, they are confessing, I am terrified of my own fragility. I have built an armor of contempt and aggression to hide the fact that I feel powerless. And your emotional honesty, your willingness to be vulnerable, exposes the charade. This is a person who equates openness with danger, who cannot afford to feel because feeling would shatter the false self. That is imprisonment, not invincibility. And you now see it. When they call you the problem, they are confessing, I cannot take responsibility for my own patterns. I cannot face my role in the destruction I create, so I must make you the architect of every conflict, the source of every pain, the reason for every failure. This is a person who will never grow, who will never change, who will die defending the illusion rather than embracing the truth. That is tragedy, not power, and you are no longer complicit in it. Now we arrive at the most uncomfortable truth. Behind every projection, behind every vicious insult, every calculated accusation is a wounded child, not a monster, a child. A child who learned very early that their authentic self was not acceptable, that vulnerability was punished, that need was shameful, that imperfection meant abandonment. And so they built the narcissistic defense, the grandiose false self, the projection machine, not because they are evil, because they are terrified. Jung wrote, "The shadow is the person you would rather not be." For the narcissist, the shadow is the entirety of their authentic self, the self that was rejected, the self that wasn't enough, the self that learned to hide in order to survive, and every projection is an attempt to keep that shadow outside themselves. Because if they let it back in, if they acknowledge their own selfishness, their own manipulation, their own weakness, they believe they will cease to exist. The fantasy is their only lifeline, and you are the collateral damage of their survival strategy. Understanding this does not obligate you to stay. It does not excuse their abuse. It does not make their projections any less destructive. But it does something else. It frees you from personalizing what was never about you. You are not the villain in their story. You are the screen onto which they project the villain they cannot face within themselves. And once you see that, you can step out of the projection booth entirely. So how do you live with this knowledge? How do you navigate a relationship or the aftermath of one once you understand that their insults are confessions? Here are the principles. 1. Stop defending yourself against projections. When they accuse you of being selfish, your instinct is to prove your generosity, to list every sacrifice, to justify your worth. Stop. That is exactly what the projection wants. It wants you to internalize the accusation, to do the work of proving it false, to exhaust yourself in the defense. Instead, recognize the projection and let it pass through you. You're selfish. Response, internal. You are confessing your own parasitic nature. I will not carry that confession for you. You don't need to say it aloud. You don't need to explain projection theory in the middle of conflict. You just need to know it and refuse to absorb it. 2. Use their projections as intelligence. Every insult is a piece of data, a glimpse into their shadow. Collect it, not for revenge, for clarity. When they call you controlling, note, this person requires absolute control and experiences my autonomy as a threat. When they call you cold, note, this person is terrified of emotional intimacy and cannot tolerate my depth. You are no longer confused by their attacks. You are informed by them, and information is power. 3. Separate who you are from what they project. This is the hardest work. Because projections land where we're already uncertain, you must cultivate discernment. Ask yourself, is there truth in this accusation? Or is there only the wound they're trying to avoid? If there's truth, if you genuinely have a controlling tendency you're working on, own it. Grow from it. But own your version of it, not theirs. If there's no truth, if the accusation is pure projection, release it completely. Do not carry their shadow work for them. 4. Understand that they cannot change through your clarity. You cannot hand them this script and expect transformation. Projection is unconscious. The narcissist does not know they are projecting. And if you try to explain it, they will experience your explanation as an attack and project even harder. You're the one projecting. You're the narcissist. You've been reading too much psychology. The defense intensifies. The mirror is rejected. Your clarity is for you, not for them. Use it to protect yourself, not to rescue them. You came here looking for an explanation, for a reason why their words never matched your actions, why their accusations landed like grenades in the architecture of your self-concept. You have it now. Their insults were never about you. They were confessions, involuntary, desperate transmissions from a psyche that cannot face its own darkness. Every time they called you selfish, they were describing their own deprivation of others. Every time they called you manipulative, they were confessing their reliance on coercion. Every time they called you the problem, they were fleeing from the truth of their own role. You are not the monster they described. You are the mirror they could not bear to look into. And now, you know the difference. Here is your final challenge. Stop asking, am I really like that? Start asking, what are they confessing about themselves? Stop defending against projections that were never yours to carry. Start protecting the truth of who you actually are, not who they needed you to be to survive their own disintegration. They will continue to project. The mechanism doesn't stop just because you see it, but you will stop absorbing it. You will stop shrinking to accommodate their shadow. You will stop questioning your reality every time they hand you a map of theirs. The narcissist's insult is a confession. Read it, learn from it, and then let it fall where it actually belongs. Not on you, on the floor between you, where all projections eventually land when you refuse to catch them.